So I'm going to start off by just saying that the word narcissist, maybe a lot of you know this, but some of you may not. It actually comes from this Greek mythological figure named Narcissus, who looked at himself in this reflecting pool so many times, and he ended up like falling in and dying. And he was like, he would always be looking at himself because he thought he was so beautiful. So I'm seeing Laura here. I'm seeing Craig here. I'm seeing Lisa here. And all kinds of people. Karen says, I just discovered you. She's in Honolulu. Hi from Las Vegas. Awesome. You know, when I do my webinars, I get people from all over the world, literally all over the world. And so narcissism knows no bounds. And the basic thing about narcissists, yes, they appear to think very highly of themselves, and they can sometimes be very boastful, depending on the type of narcissist you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a covert narcissist, you won't see that as often. But the main thing is that they have no ability to care for others. They have a complete lack of empathy. Something got broken inside of them years and years ago, back when they were children. There was some kind of trauma that happened to them that caused their wiring to be faulty. And they literally have no inner sense of value, and they try to derive all of their value from the external. I see someone from Chicago. Hi from Chicago. Awesome. And I'm seeing Eva saying, thank you, Queen. Love it. I love you guys. And so they have to derive all of their value from the external, and we call that supply. So when we refer to narcissistic supply, we're referring to these narcissists trying to grasp onto whatever they can in order to get that narcissistic supply. I recently had a conversation with Dr. Ramani, which many of you know that she and I have done a lot of collaborating together. And she said they're like rats in a maze. They're really just after one thing, just that cheese. And that's that external sense of feeling of value. And it's like feeding a black hole. And so once they attach themselves to you as their supply, they're literally like leeches. They literally suck the blood out of you because they're trying to suck value for themselves from you. And they often attach themselves to people who are empaths because they know that empaths will feel a lot and care a lot and be very sensitive to their needs. And so you find yourself giving and not receiving anything in return. And so you just are left feeling completely drained from all life itself. So I'm seeing someone from New York, Amber from Maui, Hawaii. I'm seeing all kinds of people. Someone from Maram from Arizona. This is so cool. This is my first YouTube live, and it's really cool to get to actually talk to all of you and see you here. So just know that anything that the narcissist does has really nothing to do with you. They treat you very awfully. They're going to make it about you. They're going to make you think that you're the problem. They're going to project it all onto you like it's your fault. But it's all to do with them and their need for supply. And supply can come from all sorts of places. It can come from having this big house or having a huge bank account or a prestigious job or the right spouse or living in the right community. But supply most often more so comes from making people feel devalued, debased. They judge them. They project their problems onto them. They deflect everything they do or say. They gaslight you, they lie, they manipulate. And all of that is in an effort to protect this fragile little ego that's going on inside of them. And so it's never about you. It's always about them. And that's one of the things that if you take nothing else from what I say to you in all of my videos, I want you to understand that you cannot take this personally. And I know it's really hard because so often, the person that you're dealing with, that's the narcissist, is the person that you allowed into your life that you are the most vulnerable with. It's the person that you're romantically involved with, or it might be, a family member, or, it could be a boss or a business partner or something like that. But whoever it is that's in your life, they only choose targets that they can get to, that they can really figure out what your vulnerabilities are and then end up using them against you. So it ends up being extremely painful, extremely traumatic, and it is abusive. I mean, whatever form of narcissist you're dealing with, whether it's covert or malignant, or, and I have tons of videos on covert narcissists and all the different forms of narcissists and the kinds of things that they do, but they all have this inability to care for anyone else, which is, hard to figure out when you think that this person has loved you and that you've loved them, right? It's really kind of hard to take and hard to um, swallow that. So, so I just wanted to just say hi to more of you people. This is so great. I'm loving seeing all of you here. As I said, this is my first YouTube live, so this is really cool for me to actually get to interact with you and be able to have you reach me and me reach you a little bit further. I love it. So I have somebody here from Montreal. So remember that narcissists have 3 different phases to their relationships, which is love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And I'm actually this week doing a whole series on those 3 phases. So I just did a video which came out yesterday on love bombing. Tomorrow I will be releasing the video on devaluing, and Friday the video on discarding will come out. And they vacillate between the 3 phases. And, so they can be devaluing you and then go back to love bombing you, or even into the discard phase and be love bombing you. And sometimes that's called hoovering, but they can be vacillating back and forth between these 3 phases all the time, because they use all 3 phases as a form of control. They are looking for ways to control you. So sometimes if they've devalued you too much and they realize, oh, maybe I don't want to be in a relationship with this person anymore. Maybe I don't want to give this person the supply that I've been giving them. You don't use the word supply, but in their words, that's how they think of it. Then they start to love bomb you again. Oh, I'm so sorry. Certain narcissists will say sorry, more of the covert ones. But whatever form you're dealing with, they'll go back to love bombing you in whatever way they did in order to get you to move off of that ledge, get you to move off of that position. Come on back, start giving me the supply again. And they use love bombing as a way to get that supply coming their way once again. And so they might promise you something. They might say, oh, I'll never do that again, or whatever, or of course I'll start doing this thing that you want them to do, that you think is really important to you. And they'll give you a lot of lip service. Their lips will move, and they're really, really good at manipulating. I always say they're master manipulators. And then right back to devaluing again. So it's love bomb, devalue, love bomb, devalue. And it's an extremely toxic way to be, because your brain is actually left attached to them. It's a form of trauma bonding, because they go back and forth between these phases. When they're love bombing you, and devaluing you, your dopamine levels end up actually being released in your brain. And so your brain is left craving that dopamine release again, and you become trauma bonded to the narcissist. But just understand that that is not true love at all. I mean, you cannot experience true love with someone who is incapable of loving. So I just want to pop over and see a couple of you guys that are here. I see Louise from Australia. Shout out to you down under. Love it. I have a lot of you guys who tune in for from Australia for me, and I love it. And several of you have bought my program in both Australia and in New Zealand, which is pretty cool. So when you are negotiating with a narcissist, one of the things that you should always remember is in any negotiation is that all people want to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter. We all do. We all have, being a narcissist is really sort of like on the end of a continuum of being a human. We all want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter. The difference is when you're on the narcissism end of the continuum, you cannot see, feel, or have any feelings for other people. You only care about yourself. So we all want to feel validated in some way, and that's what's going on in a negotiation. So the key to negotiating with a narcissist, and this is what I teach in my programs and in my webinars, is how to actually motivate the narcissist into wanting to have a conversation with you. And that key is going to be in your strategy and in your leverage and in looking at the various forms of supply and figuring out which supply is going to mean more to them to keep than the supply that they get from jerking you around, because they get supply from jerking you around. So when they constantly move the goalpost and you've got letters going back and forth trying to settle your case, and all of a sudden the deal has changed and you think, why did that happen? Well, because they get supply from jerking you around. So creating a strategy and creating leverage that boxes them in is absolutely essential. So for those of you who are out there right now working with a narcissist and trying to resolve a divorce or any kind of a legal matter, and you're trying a collaborative process, you're actually playing into the fact that they are now getting an opportunity to jerk you around more. You're giving them more opportunity to get supply. And remember, that supply is what feeds their ego. It's the oxygen source that they need in order to breathe. It's their breath, basically. And so the only way that you can deal with narcissists is by having a super strong strategy and leverage. And then you want to get the hell out of there. So flying monkey, the term actually came from the Wizard of Oz. And the wizard in the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch had her flying monkeys around her when she was in her like little lair or whatever she was in. And they didn't really have any thought. They just lined up with the Wicked Witch. And so that's what narcissists do. They line up these people so that you, the target, either think that you're the only one that thinks this way, because that's one of the things that narcissists use to kind of control you, is to say, you're the only one that thinks that. And so they will line up these flying monkeys to believe what they believe so that it reinforces the fact that you're the only one that thinks that way. You're the only one that believes that. You're the only one that doesn't see how great they are. You're the only one that doesn't see how generous they are. You're the only one that doesn't have respect for them. That sort of thing. So they either are lined up and aligned with the narcissist and just thinking that the narcissist person is wonderful, or they are being used in a sense that they also think that there's something wrong with you. So they try to turn these people against you. And very often they use people that they know like you, or or that you like, or that you respect. And sometimes they'll even have this person, like it could be somebody close to you. Like, when I was dealing with a couple of narcissists in my life, one of the narcissists actually had my cousin come to me and say, oh, why don't you try to give her a chance? And, obviously my cousin didn't know the whole story of what was going on. And so here my cousin is being used as a pawn in this whole narcissistic scheme to try to abuse. And I'm just looking to see how many of you have been dealing. So Annie says, I've been dealing with exes and flying monkeys related to parental alienation, and he is the narcissist. Exactly. So they line you up, their narcissist up to think that you are a bad parent, and sometimes they start this whole campaign of denigration against you long before the divorce happens. Sometimes they start planting these seeds, many months and sometimes even years before you're even onto the idea that divorce may even be an option. So they might start saying things like, oh, so-and-so had a little too much to drink at the party last night. I'm really worried about her. And this is like maybe 6 months before the divorce even gets started. So that once the divorce starts, that person can go, well, I told you that she had a problem with alcohol. And then they start trying to use that against you as, obviously, you're not a fit mother because you have a problem with alcohol. Everybody knows that. I just had a conversation with Carol down the street. She was concerned about you because of your drinking problem. And you're sitting there thinking, I have one glass of wine a week. I don't even know what you're talking about. That sort of thing. So that's the kind of thing that they'll do with their flying monkeys. They use them in their pawn, as a pawn in their overall scheme of psychological abuse. And during a divorce, or even a breakdown of a partnership, or any kind of situation where you're trying to separate yourself with a narcissist, and especially if you're getting ready to go negotiate with a narcissist, they are going to want to use these flying monkeys as a method of leverage against you, so that you feel more scared, so that they take more control over the negotiation process. So I'm just looking to see what some of you guys are saying. Anne says that's exactly what he does. Lizzie says, my employees are flying monkeys for my narc husband, so sick. Well, and the employees for a narc husband are a perfect place because they're being paid by that guy. So it behooves them to say, oh, what's going on? Okay, we'll line up and go get behind the person who we are employed by. So now, even if you had a great relationship with your husband's employees, they're like, well, I know my bread is buttered on this side, so sorry, can't talk to you. And then it makes you feel even more alone, more victimized, more isolated, more crazy. It's a method of gaslighting, because, here comes these third parties who are saying things to you about what happened in a particular situation, and it didn't happen that way. So you're being gaslighted now, or gaslit, by a third party. So these are like the minions, the henchmen of the whole narcissistic play. And when you are separating from a narcissist in a divorce or a business setting, it even gets worse. It's like they're on steroids. Whatever their worst case scenario was before, it's 100,000 times worse when you're trying to separate out from them. Because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're either for them or you are the enemy. I mean, even when you're in a relationship with them, the slightest little slight is a massive, huge thing, and it all becomes about, you don't respect me, you don't love me, you don't do enough for me, all this stuff. And all you did was say, hey, how come you didn't take out the trash or whatever? It becomes this massive, huge thing. So just imagine now they are no longer getting this narcissistic supply from you, that whatever it was that they felt they were getting from you and why they were in a relationship with you in the first place, that supply source is being threatened. So now they're just coming after you, and they come after you not just themselves, but try to line up people so that they feel that they're bolstering up their ego. And I have this whole army of people who believe what I believe, who think that you're crazy, that I'm amazing, and that you're the one that has the problem. So it's a method to make you feel even worse.
And this is really, really, really one of the most important things that you can do when you are dealing with a narcissist, either in your personal life, in your business life, or when you are negotiating with a narcissist. Is such a really, really great tool that you will have in your toolbox. And I actually say that you can use this either as, in a way, sort of a weapon or as a shield, because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you definitely need both. And you can use this right away and in any time when you're communicating with a narcissist. It means, in a way, is like you literally become like a boulder. In a way, it's more like a boulder than a rock, but you can kind of think of it as gray rock. So you become devoid of emotion. You become immovable. Just think of yourself as kind of a gray rock. What does a gray rock do? What does a gray boulder do? It just sits there. It doesn't get triggered. It doesn't move. It just literally sits there. I mean, I remember doing this when I was dealing with a couple of narcissists in my life, and I didn't know the term gray rock at the time. I just kind of instinctively knew to do this. It's kind of like I knew, don't give them the satisfaction. You know that they're trying to get under your skin. You know that they want to get some kind of rise out of you. You just don't give it to them, because what happens is they get narcissistic supply out of that. They love to see you go crazy. They love to see you get triggered. You just have to do whatever you can not to allow yourself to show that. And that's why you really need to have those boundaries. That's why you really need to keep your interactions as brief as possible, because you know that you're going to get triggered, especially if you've had a longer term relationship with them. They know how to push your buttons. They just know exactly what to do to push those buttons. So you just try to be steadfast. You try to be indifferent. So here are some good examples. They text you. They text you something where they want some big dramatic response out of you. Just write back, K, just like the one letter, just the letter K, or KK, something like that. Like my teenage daughter will respond like that sometimes. I mean, she's not trying to be like gray rock to me. She'll just do that to be cute sometimes, but you can just do that. Or you can just say, okay, if that's what you want or whatever. I mean, just make it clear, like, I'm not affected by you. I am so not affected by you. I mean, I remember one time there was somebody in my family who was like really trying to get, some emotional response going on. You just like put it back on them, like, oh geez, I'm sure traveling is really stressful or something like that. Like, you just like put it on them, like, I'm sure you're really stressed out right now. You don't even like take it personally at all. Like, I'm sure you're really stressed out right now. I'm sure you must be going through a really tough time. You don't even make it seem like whatever they're saying about you has anything to do with you at all. Because a lot of times, not only do they get narcissistic supply from it, they're also trying to get you to do something that they can then use against you for custody, use against you in court to make it look like you're crazy, something like that. So don't give that to them, because then they'll be able to show the judge or the mediator, see, I told you that person is unbalanced or bipolar or whatever it is that they're trying to say about you, right? So you got to be really, really careful about that, because there it is in black and white. You just give them that one time, or worse, they use it against you for a potential restraining order. I've seen that happen before. I mean, just that one time that you throw that one thing, or you slam that door, or you yell, and now the cops are showing up at your house and you're suddenly getting arrested for domestic violence. And there it is. You don't want to have that happen. You got to stay in control of your emotions. You got to be that gray rock, right? And especially because, if they show up at your kid's soccer game with that new form of supply or whatever, and they want you to say something so bad, you just say, oh, hello, to their new person. How are you? So nice to meet you. You just smile. Don't say a word. Don't say a word. Nothing other than that, because that is what they want. They want so much to get under your skin, so much. Think about Ted Lasso, right? I don't know if you guys watch that show, but I actually have a video, by the way, on the narcissistic characters in Ted Lasso, which you could definitely check out if you'd like. But there's actually a scene in that show where Rebecca's ex-husband comes in and he wants to just tell her about how he has gotten his new girlfriend pregnant. And you could tell that she's bothered by the fact that he did that. And he says, oh, I guess I had to, find the right person or something like that. And, it just so gets under her skin. She just doesn't want to let on. Just don't let on. That's the right thing to do, because that is exactly what they want. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't let them see you sweat. So I want you to put that in the comments right now. Don't let them see you sweat, because that's what they want. Go scream in the shower, go cry in the shower, scream in your pillow, do whatever you need to do, but you are a gray rock in front of their face. That's what you have to do. I mean, you just, in front of their face, you just smile. Even when they're gaslighting you and they're saying things, like, we had that conversation and this is how it went. I want you to smile and say, oh, you just obviously aren't remembering correctly. Oh, you just must not remember, or we remember it differently. Just say it like that. We just remember it differently. And, we can agree to disagree. And that's it. And you can just smile and walk away. The rest of what you want to say can just be silent. Just fill in the blanks silently in your head. And you don't have to say it out loud. Karma never forgets. She's got a very long memory, and karma always comes back around, because what goes around comes around. My dad used to say, be careful what you throw up in the air, because it will come back down on your head. And it definitely does. You can just say, like, I'm sorry you feel that way. That's fine, just because we disagree, you don't have to be disagreeable. That's totally fine too. And you can fake it. I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. You don't have to be anything other than whole and complete. And you are planted firmly in your power. You know who you are. And this is you knowing who you are, right? And yeah, it can be exhausting. It can be draining. And that's why you keep those interactions as brief as possible. I mean, you really don't want to spend a whole lot of time around this person, because they do want to drain you. They do want to trigger you. They're constantly needling you. They're constantly trying to get some kind of reaction out of you. because that's what feeds them. That's their food. That's their lifeblood. That's their oxygen. If they don't get that, then they're going to try to, slither on down the road to get it from somebody else. It's their way. It's how they're built. And you're not going to change that. You're never going to change that. I recently had a conversation with Marissa Peer, who's one of the most renowned therapists in the world. She won't even counsel narcissists. She won't even take them in her practice. You know why? Because she knows she can't change them. Think about that. She knows that there's nothing she can do for them. She'll help the people who've been traumatized by them because she knows that she can help them. She knows that she can do something for them, but she can't help the narcissist. You know why? Because they have no self-awareness. They can't be helped. They can't be saved. So if the therapist who does hypnotherapy, who literally trains thousands of therapists all over the world, cannot help them, you cannot help them. You can't do it. You literally do not have the tools to do it. So what can you do when you're around them? You can just go gray rock. You use that as your shield. You use that as your weapon. You say, okay, if that's what you want to think, sure, I agree with you, great, whatever. You just give them nothing, because you know why? They get bored. They get bored with a gray rock eventually. They're not interested in the gray rock. They don't care about the gray rock anymore. They move on from the gray rock because they want supply. They're not getting it from something that's not giving them any kind of feedback. My husband and I used to have somebody in our family who was, like trying to get a rise out of somebody. And then as soon as the person would finally be upset, like angry, like on the verge of tears, this person would be like, oh, now we're having a conversation. All right, now we're getting going. This is good. What? Yeah, but that's to that person, that's what that meant, because that person was finally getting fed. You don't want to be food for a narcissist. That's no fun. So just, become a gray rock, protect yourself, use that as your shield. You don't go to war without weapons. You don't get ahead in battle without weapons. You don't go to war without a shield to protect yourself, right? And when you're in battle with a narcissist, you need weapons. When you're dealing with a narcissist, it's either black or white. That's how they see things. You're either for them or you're against them. When you're in that discard phase, you are definitely against them because you become public enemy number one. So when it becomes time to say goodbye, they want to make sure that you go down before they go down. They want the whole world to see that you were wrong. This is when you see the birth of the smear campaign, right? So you got to have protection, and your protection will be that gray rock. Just become a gray rock. So no more supply, no supply for you, because you are no longer giving yourself to someone who doesn't deserve it.
So now let's talk about those energy vampires. So narcissists need an endless amount of what we call narcissistic supply. And supply is anything that feeds a narcissist's ego, which I kind of liken it to sort of like a tip of the iceberg sort of a thing. The tip of the iceberg that you see is the kind of thing that feeds anybody's ego, which is showing them respect, having lots of money, being recognized for things. We all want to feel seen and heard and know that we matter. And so, that's the kind of thing that is good for everybody. Who doesn't feel good when somebody's complimenting them, right? It's the other side of narcissism, that other side of narcissistic supply, that to me is the hidden side, the side that they don't show as many people. I kind of think of it as like when you pick up a rock and there's like bugs underneath it, that it's sort of the dark underbelly that they don't really show people except for their targets most of the time.
And that's the form of narcissistic supply that comes in devaluing and making you feel bad and gaslighting and lying to you and manipulating you and lining up flying monkeys, triangulation, all of those kinds of things. And when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with somebody who's constantly needing an endless amount of supply. It's their lifeblood, it's their food, it's their oxygen. So they literally attach themselves to people so that they can drain as much life out of you as they possibly can. And one of the things that I found so interesting when I first started learning about narcissism is that they don't attach themselves to you because you're so worthless, because then you wouldn't be a good source of supply. They attach themselves to you because you have so much worth. And the not so secret is that you are the stronger one, you're the more powerful one. And so they want to attach themselves to you because they actually want to have what you have. And when I was dealing with a couple of narcissists in my own life, I found them kind of, especially because the couple of narcissists I was dealing with were covert passive-aggressive narcissists. And if you want to know more about covert passive-aggressive narcissists, definitely check out my video on covert passive-aggressive narcissists. But I found them to be like, almost like wanting to become me. And I didn't have the vocabulary to say, oh, this person is a narcissist, that's why this is happening. But I knew how I felt. And I knew that these people were like draining the life out of me, where I just felt like that something was seriously wrong. When you're dealing with a narcissist, you feel like drained physically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in every possible way. You feel drained. And you know kind of from the beginning that something doesn't feel right, that it doesn't seem right. But it's really, really confusing because they start off with that whole love bombing stage. And so you feel like, oh, you know, they're saying all the right things. They seem to be perfect in so many ways. And so you end up kind of drawn into this situation because most people don't understand narcissism. They haven't had to deal with narcissists. And so I know I didn't. And you know, people think, you know, so often, just yesterday, in fact, I was talking to a coaching client who was saying that she, you know, is a strong person. And I've had guys say that to me too. I mean, you know, I'm a strong person. I'm a really good business person. I've been very successful. It has nothing to do with that, because these are people who are highly, highly skilled at being manipulative. Highly, I don't even know if it's so much of an intelligence issue as it is a skill issue. Like they're really, really skilled at getting people where they want them to be. And so I almost look at them as like, you know, these black widows or something who get you into their web, and then so they can suck the blood out of you and literally drain the life out of you. And if you think that you have been a victim of an energy vampire, give me the word bloodsuckers in the comments. Okay, so the first sign that you are dealing with an energy vampire is the fact that they're always involved in some kind of drama, or maybe they're the victim of something. There's always something going on with them. There's always some reason why the energy and the focus needs to remain on them. You know, they're sick, they have bad things happen to them, they've been fired, they have to move. You know, there's just always something going on. So the focus has to always remain on them. So that's one of the signs. Another sign is they diminish your problems and emphasize their own. Oh yeah, well, you think that's bad? Well, wait till you hear what happened to me. Oh, I know that's, you know, it seems terrible, but, you know, you ought to try my life. they're kind of always one-upping you. It's always like so terrible. And a lot of times what I've noticed with these, especially with these covert narcissists, is they contrive it. And I've even known covert narcissists who they've been willing to give up a relationship with their own children because it serves the narrative. That way, everybody feels sorry for them. That way, they get to be the victim. And, oh, isn't that awful that your children aren't speaking to you? That's terrible. Where they actually sabotage the relationship themselves. So they'll go to almost any length to have the attention remain on them. And number 3 is similar to what I was talking about before, but it goes even another step further, which is that they're a martyr. Oh, I always have to be the one to take care of everything and everyone. Poor me, woe is me. All the bad stuff happens to me. Life isn't fair. I'm always the sick one. I can never catch a break. And you definitely, especially see this from covert narcissists. The next thing that you see is they take advantage of your loving and caring nature. I was actually just talking to somebody this morning who was just saying how upset she was that her husband wouldn't do anything around the house, like nothing, like not even take out the trash, not help with the animals, nothing. And what made her the most mad, even more mad when she found out that her husband was cheating with somebody half his age, more mad than anything was the fact that she found out that he was doing stuff around her house, that he was actually taking out the trash and all these things. Like here she is over there doing everything. He wasn't even working. And yet, here she is being taken advantage of. And I know that was my experience too. A lot of times when you're in these relationships, you're the one who ends up working so hard, doing 95% of the contributions to the relationship. And it's still not enough. They're still entitled. You're supposed to be doing that for them. Yeah, well, what have you done for me lately? Kind of a thing. And you're just busting your butt to try to keep up with everything and hoping that they're going to see that, they're going to appreciate that, but they never really do. It's just like you're constantly putting in deposits, but you're never taking out any withdrawals in that situation. It's a black hole that you're constantly feeding. And the next thing is that they guilt trip you and manipulate you and try to make you feel bad. So, this is part of the manipulation factor. They're constantly making you feel like you're not doing enough, you're not giving enough. Oh, how could you be so mean to somebody who's sick? Why would you bring that up? I can't believe you're bringing up something so small. You're really blowing this out of proportion. It's not that bad, or, and so you're constantly feeling guilty and manipulated in the relationship. And the next one is that you're always feeling traumatized. You're just always like, what are they doing next? What are they doing to me next? What's happening next? I know that's how it was with me. And I've dealt with narcissists a lot in my law practice, but it wasn't until I actually had to experience this, not as a husband, but as people, who were close enough to me to do damage. And, I was always like feeling like the next shoe is going to drop, what's around the corner, what are they going to do to me next? Constantly trying to figure out, where can I put up boundaries? Where can I protect myself? How can I anticipate what they're going to do next and protect myself and put up boundaries? And you just, it's exhausting. So you kind of feel tired all the time and feel traumatized all the time. So that's another way that you might know that you're dealing with an energy vampire. And the last way is that you feel like they're constantly watching you, almost trying to become you. And you should definitely check out my video on they're always watching you, or why narcissists are always watching you, because it's really kind of a creepy thing that they're studying you to almost figure it out what it is that you have and become you. And somehow they think if they sort of suck all of that energy out of you and suck all of your traits from you, that they can kind of have them. It's the most crazy piece of narcissism. It's one of the creepiest pieces that I found about narcissists. But you definitely want to understand that that's what you're dealing with when you're going to negotiate with them, because you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel traumatized, and you're going to be wondering why. And it's understanding this and feeling and starting to feel more powerful that will allow you to start taking those steps toward getting out of the relationship. So narcissistic supply. I've seen a lot of people ask this question, like, what is supply exactly? You hear this word thrown around. What supply actually is what drives the narcissist, which is anything that feeds their ego. So narcissistic supply can be what you normally think of what feeds people's egos, like having a big house, or having lots of money, or a prestigious job, or the right wife or husband, or living in the right community, and all of those things that make you feel more important, than other people. Those are all external sources of supply. But the other way that they get supply is through what I call devaluing, debasing, judging, degrading people, controlling people, intimidation tactics, gaslighting. All those sorts of things are also a way that narcissists get supply. So understand that the narcissist is a very fragile, broken person inside. And everything they do is to cover up the fact that there's this teeny little thing inside that decided long ago, long before you ever came into the picture, when they were maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, that the world is not a great place. They can't trust the world. It was either because they experienced some sort of trauma. It may have been that they were neglected in some way, abused in some way. I've even read things that overindulged children can become narcissists as well. But the bottom line is that they end up with no sense of inner value. So they believe that they only get value from the external world, and that they have to manipulate it. They have to lie about it. They have to manipulate it, and that nobody cares about them. And so they don't really care about anybody else. And in fact, if you try to care about them, they eventually end up punishing you, because there must be something wrong with you for caring about them, because they have no inner sense of value. They have a very, very fragile sense of self. So in a divorce situation, you will see that injury, you're far into the discard phase. And if you haven't seen my videos on the 3 stages of a narcissistic relationship, I highly recommend you go back and watch those. So it's love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And I have 3 different videos on each of those sections of their relationship, but they all interplay all the time. They can be love bombing as they're devaluing, or love bombing as they're discarding, or even as you're discarding. So they go back and forth between these phases. But what happens during the discard phase is you start to see the birth of the smear campaign. And that's when you start to see them lining up their flying monkeys, and they have the triangulation, and all that stuff is going on. And I did my Narcissism 101 last week was on flying monkeys. So if you want to know more about them, go check out that video as well. But basically, when you are dealing with them in a divorce, they are in full-on attack mode, because when you're dealing with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. So in a divorce situation, you're clearly against them. So they go on full-on attack mode, and they start wanting to get you first, and they start doing all kinds of things to try to manipulate you.
And here's the key when it comes to divorcing a narcissist and dealing with supply. The thing is that you have to figure out if you want to try to settle your case. And I just did a coaching call with somebody on this morning. If you want to settle your case, then you need to figure out what form of supply means more to them than the supply that they get from jerking you around. The problem is that you, as a reasonable person, are trying to resolve a case or resolve differences or issues like a normal person. You think, what can we do to get to a place of being done with this case? Or how do we resolve this in a way that we each get something that's fair? Or what does the law say? Or something like that. Like, you look at all of those things. They don't look at that. I mean, they'll tell you that they do, but what it really comes down to is, what are they getting out of this deal? And if what they're getting is not more important to them than the supply that they get from jerking you around, then they will continue to jerk you around. For those of you out there who have been dealing with narcissists in a case for years, or even just dealing with them for years, if they're still in your life and they're still jerking you around, then that means that they are still getting some amount of supply. They enjoy watching you squirm. They enjoy watching you get emotional. They get off on that, and they get supply from that. That's their food. That's their oxygen. That's what they breathe. That's what they live on. Like, without that, they feel like they have no sense of self. That's how they get their sense of self. It's totally screwed up, but that's the truth. That's what it is. That's what narcissistic supply is. So when you're dealing with them in a divorce situation, or even a dissolution of a business relationship, or even if you're dealing with a family member or a neighbor or somebody in your life who's a narcissist, you have to understand that they get supply from making your life miserable. So you have to figure out what supply source is going to be more important to them to keep than the supply source that they get from making you miserable. Now, let's talk about word salad. What the heck is a word salad? Narcissists use a variety of things to deflect anything off of themselves and make sure that the other person thinks that they're crazy. They use gaslighting and all sorts of other techniques in order to maintain control over their victims or their targets. So when you are in a relationship with a narcissist, you're going to be dealing with word salad. And I've actually heard some of my clients and my subscribers and the people in my community have talked about how their brains end up feeling like scrambled eggs. It really is in a form of emotional abuse. It's a form of how they traumatize their victims. And it can leave you feeling very confused and very powerless and paralyzed. So, before I talk about word salad, let me just give you a little bit of a basic. If you haven't watched any of my other videos before, I want to make sure that I give you some basics, which is that a narcissist has no inner sense of value. They have to get all of their value from the external. Something happened with them when they were a child. They feel, they have no self-esteem. They're actually extremely insecure, extremely fragile. And while all of us are on a continuum in some ways, I mean, in some ways, all of us have, what people would refer to as narcissistic traits, meaning, hey, we all want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter. That is a universal feeling. If you are a human being, you have those feelings, and there is nothing wrong with those feelings. Of course, we matter, and of course, we need to feel whole and complete. The thing is, where you're dealing with a narcissist is where it becomes pathological, where it becomes they absolutely need to have it. They thrive on that, and it's so far gone on the continuum that they just have completely lacked any ability to care about another person. a lot of times people think, oh, that person says that they're so great, they have to be a narcissist. Well, you're forgetting about the second half of that, which is not only do they think that they're great, which is nothing wrong with that, right? But they completely lack any ability to have any feelings or care or empathy for another person. They may know what to do to pretend. And when they're love bombing, they're in that. And they do long for connection, but they just are so pathologically ill in a lot of ways. I mean, they're mentally ill. They cannot cross that bridge. So they feel that they have to manipulate the world in order to get what they want. And so they use a variety of tools they have a whole little tool chest that they go to manipulate the world and to gaslight people and to just to continue to maintain control. In other words, they just don't feel inside that anybody will actually ever love them or be with them unless they are manipulating the situation. It's actually quite sad, but you empath, yeah, I'm talking to you, you cannot fix them, and the emotional abuse will not stop. They really can't be rehabilitated other than to, and I've talked to psychologists about this, and I do highly recommend that you watch some of my other videos, like with Dr. Romani, and specifically my interviews with Dr. Romani and Tina Swithin in One Mom's Battle, how to represent yourself in court. Dr. Romani actually talks about if they can be rehabilitated, and basically she talks about how they can learn how to behave sometimes. Like she has actually had a few narcissists as patients, and she's been able to get them to a point of being able to kind of pretend like they care enough about people or go through the motions or act the right way, but they don't actually ever come to a point of truly caring, because there's something within themselves that's like broken. It's like wishing somebody could grow an arm back if their arm has been amputated or something for some reason. So it's just some things are just not possible. So as part of their world of manipulation, they use something called word salad. And in the narcissism world, that basically means that they talk in a way that's like circular conversation. That's one of the things. You think something is settled, and then they come back as if it hasn't been settled, and there they bring it up again. And you're thinking, wait a minute, I thought we had done that conversation. Why are you bringing that up again? Something like that. So, you'll provide an explanation for something. For example, why were you late? And you say, I was late because I was taking care of my sister. And then you have some big fight about it or whatever, but you prove it, you show I was late because I was taking care of my sister, blah, blah, blah. And then like 5 minutes later, they come back, why were you late? I can't believe that you were late. I can't believe you did this to me. And you think, didn't we just have this conversation? I thought we had this conversation. But there you are having it again. And they're just trying to like force it out of you again. And it's just a way of trying to make you feel bad or feel guilty or give them attention and show you how horrible you were for disrespecting them and not showing up when you were supposed to, and that sort of thing. So circular conversation is one of their favorite little word salad techniques. Another technique that they use for word salad is just a complete lack of logic. So for example, if they'll accuse you of cheating. You were at lunch with your mother and your sister, and they'll say, I know that you were cheating. And you're sitting there defending yourself thinking, what the heck are you talking about? I was at lunch with my mother and my sister. You know that I was texting you the whole time. I sent you pictures of myself there. I mean, and even if you didn't do that, you know that you that's where you were, and you're just like the person who would never cheat. But yet here they are, like saying, well, you're obviously a cheater, look at what you're wearing. And you're looking at yourself going, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Like, what you're saying has absolutely no logic whatsoever. It makes no sense. But here you are defending yourself like there's something wrong with you. And it's just this utter verbal chaos of like you're in the twilight zone. So that's number two, is just a complete lack of logic. And another version of word salad is, your typical garden variety gaslighting. And if you want to know more about gaslighting, you should definitely check out my video on gaslighting techniques. But basically, it's saying things to make you think that you're crazy. They'll say, I'm going to go away for the weekend with my friends. And you'll say, oh, when are you doing that? And they'll say, oh, we talked about that and you agreed. Don't you remember? And you're sitting there thinking, no, we never had that conversation. Like, where did that come from? But when they do that over and over and over again, you really do start to question your own mind. You start to question your own sanity. You start to think, well, maybe we did have that conversation, because they'll do it to you over and over and over again so many times that you think, well, I don't know, maybe I am the one that's crazy. And what happens with this whole word salad thing is it really just eats away at your self-esteem, and it eats away at your sense of self, so much so that you really start to question everything about yourself, and you start to really believe, and you've been so traumatized that you start to really believe that, gosh, if I were just more perfect, if I were just better, if I just tried harder, if I just were more careful with my words, if I just checked in with him more and showed him or her how often I where I was, I can prove to this person, I don't want to say him or her, obviously there's narcissists in all genders. You just start to believe, like, it's me, it's definitely me, there's something wrong with me. And they really want you to believe that, until something in your little soul, and I always refer to the Maya Angelou, I know why the caged bird sings, because that caged bird is your soul. And when people end up in my office as an attorney and they're ready to get divorced, or I'm on a coaching call with somebody who's dealing with a narcissistic business partner, or somebody who wants to talk with me about figuring out a way or a strategy or leverage with dealing with narcissists, they start to, really see that, like, this is a soul decision. I call it a soul decision. Your soul knows that something is deeply wrong. Your soul knows that it's time to sing it. Your soul knows it's time to be free. And so slowly but surely you get that little glimpse of light. And that's when you start watching videos like mine, or many of the others of us who are in this space that I've collaborated with, such as Dr. Ramani, Tina Swithin, Tracy Malone, Kim Saeed, Melanie Tanya Evans. All of us are in this space working for you you get that glimmer of light. Your soul gets that glimmer of light, and you go, oh my God, this is me. This is what's happening. And you start gathering information, and you start getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's why I do what I do. So let's talk about trauma bonding today. And trauma bonding is an interesting thing. It's like, how can you feel bonded to a person who has abused you? And that's basically what trauma bonding is. And I've seen it so often in my practice. I recently had a meeting with a client who I'd helped him with his divorce. And now he has a girlfriend who is very, very abusive to him. His now ex-wife is actually trying to get the children back from him or reduce his time sharing because of how toxic his girlfriend is. And here he is facing the prospect of potentially losing his children, or at least having his time sharing be very much reduced. And yet he still cannot give up this girlfriend. I mean, he's just so trauma bonded to her. And how can you be trauma bonded to a person who has been abusive to you? Well, the first time that I saw an explanation about that was in this book, which I've done a whole video about the covert passive aggressive narcissist and this book. So if you haven't checked that out, go check out that video that I've done, and I'll drop a link to that below. But in this book, Debbie Mirza talks about the concept of intermittent reinforcement. And that's what happens when you're dealing with narcissists. You get this intermittent reinforcement. And I talked about that in the 3 separate videos that I did on the different stages of a narcissistic relationship, which is love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. And so you start off with love bombing, and you're getting this love bomb, love bomb, love bomb. And then they start devaluing, but then they go back to discarding, and or love bombing, devaluing, love bombing, devaluing. And sometimes it's love bombing during the discard phase too. So it's kind of like love bombing at the beginning and then discarding at the end. And in between, it's a toxic stew of disaster, a vortex of craziness. So, but what happens is, according to a psychologist named Robert Sapolsky, he talks about how these monkeys were tested and they were only given treats intermittently. And if they got a treat every single time, the dopamine levels in their brain didn't do anything, nothing happened. But if they got a treat intermittently in a variable way where they didn't know when they were going to get the treat, then the dopamine levels rose in their brains to the level of cocaine. So in other words, they get this pleasure release just because of the anticipation that they might get the treat. And so that's what's happening in our brains when we become trauma bonded to this person. You actually become addicted, according to these professionals, to the need for their love bomb. You want to believe that, and you become kind of codependent on them in that sense. And so that's what trauma bonding is, and that's what makes it so difficult to get out of the relationship and become like, okay, like I teach you how to develop a strategy and create leverage. And I just did a video on leverage. If you haven't checked it out, go check that out. But if you haven't been used to being on the offensive, it's so foreign to you to even think about, geez, I can think about something for myself. And part of the reason why it's so hard is because of this trauma bonding and this effect on your brain. Your brain literally becomes like scrambled eggs or something because you're so bonded to this person. So I just want to take a second and read a couple of your comments. I see Leah from Missouri, and I see, Micah is calling, watching me from a hot tub in Merritt Island, Florida. How awesome is that? Isabella from Poland. Ashley says, I really feel for people who have no knowledge of this and are judged by their loved ones. And that is so true. I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people just say, why don't you leave? Why don't you just get out? And I know sometimes from my own perspective as a divorce lawyer, I'm looking at people going, why in the heck would you be staying? And it wasn't until I understood this concept of trauma bonding that it made it so much more clear to me why people don't leave, why they feel almost addicted to staying. And I actually even spoke with a client this morning who was all ready to leave because she had found out that, it looked like her husband had been cheating and had been withholding a lot of information from her, which is, a lot of typical narcissistic behavior. And yet, he found out that she knew some things and that she was potentially going to leave. And she said, "Oh my God, he's been so wonderful this whole weekend. And this week he's back to the man that I married. He's sending me flowers." This guy's love bombing her big time to get her back under his web of control. And even as she's telling me this, that maybe she might want to do a postnuptial agreement instead of a divorce and things like that, she's also saying to me, gosh, his words don't match his actions. And she's still saying, hey, basically this guy is still exhibiting all these narcissistic traits, but the love bombing is like drawing her back in. He's using all the right words that he knows that he needs to use in order to get her back into his web of control. So it's very difficult sometimes to think about, gosh, I can leave this person and I can be okay. They want you to think that you're not going to be okay without this person. I mean, they spent a lot of time working your brain to make you dependent on them and think that you're nothing without them, and think that you can't, that the world is going to be against you. Think that everybody else thinks that they're wonderful and you're the one that's crazy. They do this number on you. It's almost like deprogramming your brain from being in a cult in a lot of ways. So, I see somebody here from Sydney, Australia, and I see Terry saying they destroy your every out. Well, they do try to, but there's always a way out. I actually was just coaching a guy this past week who is dealing with a narcissistic business partner, and he was like, I just don't see a way out. And I told him there's always a way out. There's definitely always a way out. It's just feeling that strength and understanding what's going on with your brain. Because once you understand that and you go, okay, it's really hard for me to leave because I'm dealing with trauma bonding here. This is what's happened to my brain. And once you start having that realization and you can see it and you can name it, then it makes it so much easier for you to recognize the signs when they're happening and start to pull away from it and not have it be controlling you as much as it had been in the past. So I said, oh, what was that other option other than divorce? So you can always do a postnuptial agreement. What I was referring to in my particular client's case is that she had a prenuptial agreement, and we were talking about the possibility while he's in the love bomb phase of taking advantage of that, ethically manipulating the manipulator, and seeing if he would be willing to renegotiate the prenup into a postnuptial agreement that would afford her a little bit more financial stability if she ever did decide to leave him. So that's what I was talking about. So Karen Smith says, Hoover in progress, trauma bond broken. That's so good to know. That's so good to know. So once you start to recognize it, oh, they're hoovering. Oh, I see what's going on here. Oh, I'm feeling pulled back in because of my trauma bonding. It's so much easier to start, stepping back and seeing it as almost like an outsider would, rather than the emotional aspect of it. So let's talk about future faking. So the word integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, well, that doesn't really apply to narcissists. And in fact, if you keep allowing narcissists to continue to promise you the world, and then you realize it's not materializing, you're actually enabling their behavior, which of course is not something that we necessarily want to do, because we want to maybe hopefully get out of these relationships with these narcissists. So what happens with narcissists is part of the love bombing process which is how they get you into these relationships in the first place, is just kind of promising you the world. You know, the whole concept of overpromise or underdeliver, or under promise and over deliver, you know, that you're supposed to do in sales. They kind of do the over promise and under deliver. That's basically what future faking is. It's, they say whatever they need to about what your future might be in order to get you to do what they want you to do, or get you to get off of what it is that you're bothering them about. Or even in the beginning of the relationship, when they're in the love bomb stage, which they do love bomb all throughout the relationship when they need to, by the way. And if you want to know more about love bombing, you should definitely check out my video on love bombing. But you know, one of the 101 conversation, that, you know, the glossary of basic narcissistic terms is that you need to know about is what we call this future faking. And I have a whole bunch more videos on the 101s, basic terms on narcissism, and you should definitely check out some of those as well, especially, you know, gaslighting and flying monkeys and narcissistic injury and supply and things like that. And all of those videos are also on my channel. So, but what happens with narcissists is they want you to do what they want you to do, which is give them an endless amount of narcissistic supply. So narcissistic supply is anything that feeds their ego. So it can be giving them tons of compliments and adulation and respect, or maybe it's giving them money, or maybe it's giving them a place to live, or maybe it's, you know, giving them the prestige of being with you, or allowing you a life that they want, something like that. But they also get supply from, you know, manipulating you and lying to you and getting you to do things that they want you to do, and devaluing you and putting you down and making you know that, you know, that you are lesser to them. You know, just even in little small ways sometimes, like not remembering to do something that you asked them to do, or something like that. But with future faking is a way of getting you to believe that, okay, even though you're not getting what you want from them now, that you will get it from them at some other time. So down the road, you're going to have this amazing life together, or starting now, they're going to be so much better. You know, I was just talking to a client whose husband was, you know, looking at other women online and doing all of these things, and she almost left him. And he said, I will never, never, never do that again. In fact, I will get rid of all my social media pages. I'll do whatever I need to do in order to keep you, in order for you to stay with me. Don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me. And so all this future promise of how life would look. And then they stick to it for a little bit of a period of time, but then they really can't maintain that because they really didn't plan to keep their promise anyway. So they stick to it for a little bit of a period of time, and then of course they fall off the map and they don't end up continuing with whatever it was they said they were going to do. And in this particular case, that husband, of course, continued to maintain relationships with women online because he just thought that he would be able to get away with it. Because, you know, the reason why he continues to do that is because of that whoring that they need to do of getting as much narcissistic supply as they possibly can. So he didn't really plan to ever get rid of these other women online. He just wanted to future fake it with the wife to say, I will do this, and in the future things will be better, and look, I'm going to be the person that you always wanted me to be, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just empty promises, empty promises. That's basically what future faking is a bunch of empty promises. And if this is sounding familiar to you, give me an amen in the comments. So how do you know if you're enabling future faking? It's by making excuses for this person. And sometimes we do that in order to kind of protect ourselves because we don't want to believe that this person is bad. And so sometimes we'll find ourselves making excuses. Like, let's say somebody said that they're going to start coming home on time. You know, that this person is always late, and they said, okay, from now on, I'm going to start coming home on time. And so now they start saying things like, you know, I can't make it. I have to work late. Traffic is bad. I have a big project going on. And so you find yourself kind of making excuses for that person, like, well, they have a lot of work commitments, or, well, reliability isn't really their strong suit, or punctuality isn't really their strong suit. It never really has been. And so you start making excuses for that person. Another type of way that we sort of enable it is by saying something like, I know his or her heart is in the right place. And you know, a lot of times we do this really because we don't want to believe that this person that we've been with or spent so much time with, it can be bad, you know, and a lot of times it's not all bad. I mean, that's the thing with narcissists, because of the love bomb stage, sometimes things are actually not all bad. Sometimes they seem like they can be really good, and we spend like the entire relationship craving, wanting that goodness to come back, wanting to see that good part of that person. And so sometimes we make excuses by saying, hey, I know that the person's heart is in the right place, even though they're not doing what they say they're going to do. Another way that we enable it is to just say, you know what, I just decided I'm going to live with that. I know that they're never going to do what they say they're going to do. So I just assume that I'm going to be responsible. So let's just say that this person says, you know, I know you've been shouldering a lot of the housework. I know we both work all the time, and you do everything at home. I'll take on doing the laundry. And maybe the person does the laundry for like a week or two, and then, you know, there it is, the laundry's piling up. So instead of wanting to start an argument, you find yourself saying, you know what, I'll just go ahead and do it. I'll just assume that, you know, it's all my responsibility. And if the other person decides to do it, well, that's a bonus, but I'm not going to expect it. I just expect that they're not going to keep their word. That also enables the narcissist. The other thing that enables it is just not bringing it up at all, not reminding them what their promise was. And a lot of times when you're dealing with a narcissist, you don't want to remind them what their promise was, because if you do, it can end up being a big, huge fight. And if you know that that's the case, then you're probably with a narcissist, because, you know, a person who's not a narcissist, who wants a relationship to work, who actually has care and empathy for the other person, would be like, oh my God, you're right. I'm so sorry. I said that I would do that and I didn't do that. That's what a person who has integrity would do. But a narcissist wants to deflect. They want to project. They want to make sure that it's your fault. You know, if you are afraid to bring it up because you know that they're going to say, you're right, I didn't do that, it's because it's your fault. I'm sorry you didn't do what you said you were going to do. You know, that whole faux apology. If you want to know more about narcissists, faux apology, and whether or not they say sorry, check out my video on do narcissists say sorry, and if they do they mean it? But, you know, a lot of times that's what you're going to get. And so if you find yourself just not bringing it up at all, it's probably because you just don't want the backlash of whatever that's going to be. So, you know, they future faked, they said they were going to do something, they didn't do it, and you just find yourself saying, and you know what, I'm not going to bring it up, it's not even worth it. So if you find yourself harboring a ton of resentment, because who harbors more resentment about the future faking that didn't happen? You think it's the narcissist, or you think it's the person who was the victim of the narcissist? I guarantee you it's the person who's been the victim, because you just sit there and you go, okay, well, this person is not delivering on their promises. They're not keeping their promises to me. I either I bring it up and I deal with the wrath, or I don't bring it up and then I still end up not getting what it is that I wanted. And so you end up carrying this sadness and this resentment, and it actually turns into feeling terrible about yourself and feeling guilty that you want something because that's what they want you to feel. or you end up having like no self-esteem or no sense of self, and you end up feeling like you're just a shell of yourself because of this, these empty promises that just keep not materializing. Because, you know, obviously you start to think, I guess I'm just not worth having these promises be delivered on. You know, I guess I'm not worth this person doing what they say they're going to do, where it's actually the opposite. The other person just has no sense of self and no sense of self-worth and no sense of value. So they try to put everybody down and make it look like that they're better than everybody else. And so it's the great game of manipulation. It's just one form of manipulation that they use to get people to do what they want them to do. So in the end, future faking is really a classic sign of narcissism. And if you are seeing this, then you are probably in a relationship with a narcissist, unfortunately. So let's talk about projection. This is part of my Narcissism 101 series. And if you haven't watched any of the videos before on Narcissism 101, you can definitely go back and do that. I even have one that's just Narcissism 101. You can check out that video. And then I have videos on all other types of things with narcissists in the 101 series, including flying monkeys and gaslighting and all that good stuff. All these words that you never knew that you wanted to know and needed to know, and probably would have rather not dealt with narcissists to find this all out. But if you are dealing with one, I know that you're in hell. I know that the trauma that they can bring, because I've had to deal with it myself, not only in my law practice, but also in my own life. And so I have this mission, this personal crusade to help you guys escape from narcissists, not just be educated on what a narcissist looks like, because great, you find out the person you're with is a narcissist. Fantastic. How does that help you, right? I mean, what you really need is step-by-step guidance on how to get the hell out of this situation. And that's what I do for you. That's what I do here on this channel and in my resources. So now let's talk about projection. So what happens when you're dealing with narcissists is they never want to take responsibility for anything. Everything is always someone else's fault, or they deny that it happened, or, you know, deny, deflect. It's not me, it's somebody else, or whatever. And projection is actually part of that. It's a self-defense mechanism that narcissists use. It's one of their weapons that they use. They have many, but projection is just one of them. And what's happening with projection is where they actually are, whatever you're saying about them, that becomes what it is about you. So that's why I tell people, don't call them a narcissist, because then that's going to become what you are. So, you know, if you say you're a narcissist, they're going to say, oh, well, that's what you are. You're a narcissist. So, but it's literally anything that you might say about them. So if you say that they're irresponsible, now you become the one that's irresponsible. If you are saying that they are cheating, for example, let's say that they're you're looking in their phone and you're seeing text messages with, you know, a coworker that seem to be a little bit too familiar, a little bit too flirty, and you say that they're having an inappropriate relationship with that particular person. Now they're going to start saying that you're having inappropriate relationships. Now you're the one that is potentially the cheater. You're the one that's potentially the problem. If you say that they're irresponsible with money, they're going to turn around and say that about you. And it's not even necessarily just about you. It could be with anyone. So, you know, they could accuse people of being
overweight and make comments about somebody being overweight when they're overweight. And you're looking at them thinking, well, but you're overweight, you know, so why are you saying things about this person? But that's what they do when they're projecting. A lot of times they project even ahead of time. So even if you haven't accused them of something, they'll start going ahead and project. You know, let's say they know that they're manipulators, so they'll call you a manipulator. They know that they're pathological liars, so they'll constantly accuse you of lying. Even if they're cheaters, they'll constantly accuse you of cheating. So, you know, they'll always be projecting onto you what it is that they're doing. And so that's what projection is. It's a self-defense mechanism. It's a weapon that they use. And if you have seen them do this, give me an amen in the comments. I want to see amen in the comments if you've seen this. So what can you do about it if they're trying to use projection against you? For one thing, don't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. I've often talked about the book, The Four Agreements, because one of the agreements that you make with yourself in that book is to not take anything personally. And I'll drop a link to that below. It's a very easy read, but just one of the things you can definitely do to not have this bother you and to kind of deflect it is to just not take it personally. Understand that narcissists do whatever they need to do in order to get narcissistic supply. And they do get supply from seeing you squirm, from seeing you upset, from controlling you. And so if you are saying, what the heck? And oh my God, this is, are you crazy? That's not me, it's you. Now you're down into it, you're into the thick of it with them. So you just don't take it personally. You go, okay, if that's what you want to think, and then just move forward and move on, and don't give it any energy like that. The next thing that you can definitely do is what I started to allude to in number one, which is keep your emotions out of it. You know, once you see them doing that kind of thing and you're not taking it personally, it's a whole lot easier to just kind of keep your emotions out of it. Don't get mad, don't get upset, don't scream, don't yell, at least in their face. You'd never want to show them that you are upset or that they're getting to you, because then you give them that narcissistic supply. So, you know, once you're no longer in their presence, you can cry, you can scream, you can yell into your pillow, write it in your journal, tell your best friend, whoever you need to vent about it. Come join me in my private Facebook group on you know, it's called Narcissist Negotiators. But, you know, whatever you need to do to not show them that it upsets you, just, you know, okay, if that's what you want to think, you're entitled to your thoughts. And then that's it. You don't take it on. Don't jump into the trenches with them. Don't take it personally, and don't get emotional about it. So just remember that it's a self-defense mechanism that they use. It's a weapon that they use. And by not being triggered by it, now you're basically almost using that weapon back against them, because they're not getting any supply out of it, so they're not getting anywhere with it. So, so that's projection. It's something that a narcissist uses as part of their arsenal of weapons of abuse and self-deflect and manipulation, and not taking responsibility for things. So now let's talk about breadcrumbing. You've heard of the term gaslighting. Maybe you've heard of the term flying monkeys. Maybe you've heard of all of these different terms, probably way more about narcissists than you ever wanted to learn. But there's another term out there, and it's called breadcrumbing. And it's kind of really a form of future faking. And if you want to know more about future faking, check out my video on future faking, and you'll learn way more about that. But basically, in a nutshell, what future faking is you are leading the person to believe that they're going to have a future that is different than what has been in the past. And so future faking when you're already in a relationship with a narcissist is you've called them out on their behavior, and you've said, here's what I see, that you've done or not done. You promised that you would do this, but you didn't. And so what future faking is the narcissist will then turn around and say, okay, let's just forget about that. Here's what it's going to look like in the future. I'm going to be better. I'm going to do all the things that I said that, that you want me to do now. And they paint this picture. It's kind of a form of love bombing in a way that just makes it look like the way life is going to be going forward is going to be so much better and so much different than the way life has been so far, or the things that have happened so far in the past. So just move forward, let's forget about it. And it's a way to kind of quiet you, silence you, get them off your back, get you to not look at whatever it was that you were upset with them about. So that's future faking. So breadcrumbing is kind of, in a way, a form of future faking. But in breadcrumbing, what you are dealing with is you're just starting the relationship with this person, or you think you're starting a relationship with this person. And so they give you enough, either through social media or texting or something like that, that makes you think they're interested in you. And so, they might say how beautiful you are, or how handsome you looked, or something like that. And you start to believe that there's a possibility of a long-term relationship. And even they might even get into a relationship with you, but it just feels like it's not really going anywhere. But they give you just enough to make you feel like something is going to happen. And so they kind of future fake with you. Oh, I can't wait to see you soon. We're going to spend the weekend together, something like that. And it could even be in a business relationship too, by the way, where they say, we're going to do great things together, or I'm going to have you on my show, or, I can promise to deliver this particular client to you. And they tell you just enough to keep you interested and keep you going. So they're throwing out these little breadcrumbs to you to keep you on the hook. It's basically leading you on. It's a form of leading you on, a very narcissistic manipulation tactic that they use to get people, into their lair, their web of control, their little narcissist kingdom, is the way I kind of think of it in my mind. And the reason they do that is because they want to have as much supply as possible. They need to have as much supply as possible. So if they can get as many people lined up interested in them, then they get narcissistic supply from that. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply, check out my video on narcissistic supply. It's basically anything that feeds their ego. They get a rush from the fact that they're controlling you. And they really love to get a rush from the fact that not only are they controlling you, but they're not even giving you what you want, which gives them another form of rush. So they're, they've got these people that are hanging on their every word and hoping to be with them, but not getting that. And that just feeds their ego, and it gives them that narcissistic supply. So some red flags of breadcrumbing are they are making plans, but they never seem to come to fruition. Or you seem to be much more interested in making plans than they are. So you're constantly trying to go back to them and get them to respond to you. And it always seems to be you initiating that conversation. And if you've seen this behavior and you think it is so wrong, give me a so wrong in the comments. Now, another red flag that you might see is that they seem super warm, but then they turn super cold. And then they act like, oh, why are you hounding me? And what are you bugging me for? Or maybe they just ghost you completely. They just stop talking to you completely because, now they think that you're acting like you're so desperate, even though they were the ones that led you on. Like they might even say, we're going to go do something next weekend. And then you go to bring up, what are we doing next weekend? And they think, oh, well, they say, we're not doing anything next weekend. Or they say, oh, maybe it's Friday and you were planning to do something that weekend. And now suddenly it's, we can go, maybe grab lunch on Sunday instead of actually spending the entire weekend together. And then when it comes time for lunch on Sunday, now all of a sudden they can't make lunch. They're sick or they have other plans or something happened. And, they're constantly breaking their plans with you. And then they act like, oh, what's wrong with you for trying to push on this? And you need to give them some space. So that is probably another really huge red flag. I mean, yes, people have to cancel plans every once in a while, but if you keep seeing a pattern like that, it could be a really big red flag for you that you're being breadcrumbed.
So hoovering is actually a form of love bombing that takes place during one of the other phases. So it's usually the discard phase. And during this discard phase, where the narcissist might feel that they're losing control. So remember, love bombing is a form of controlling the victim. It's a form of getting that person into their web of control. I always say their layer of control, into their web. And so that it's a form of manipulation so that they can control you. And if they feel that sense of that grip loosening, that their grip of control is loosening because of the discard phase. Maybe you've hired a lawyer, maybe you've talked to other people, maybe they sense that you don't care that much about them anymore. That's when you start to see the hoovering start in. That's when they start to come back. They start love bombing you. They start saying things like, oh, come on, we've always been so good together, or we can work this out, or you don't need to worry about that. I'll always have your back, things like that. As the lawyer, what I see people doing a lot of times is they'll come in when the person's hired the lawyer and say, oh, you don't need that lawyer. We can work this out. We've always been so good at working things out. We've always been good at talking to each other, or something to that effect. But what hoovering is they are coming back and love bombing because they feel that their narcissistic supply source is being threatened in some way. And they get supply from controlling you. They get supply from jerking you around. They get supply from anything that feeds their ego. So does this relate to brothers and sisters too? Absolutely, it does. And I see Dee Dee here from Germany. Awesome. Hello in Germany. My mom is German. My dad is Chinese. So I love my German people and my German roots. Awesome. So, and yes, as Renee says, it can be anybody. So yeah, these apply to anyone. So hoovering happens when the narcissist senses that their control is loosening. And so they come back and they start to love bomb again to try to get that control back again. So they go back to the tool that they used in the beginning to get you into their lair to begin with. So, it might be that they're horrible to you, but then they turn around and say, oh, you're so beautiful. or, make you a smoothie or whatever, but behind your back, they're, stabbing you in the back, or they are smearing you, or they are. And so it can be very, very confusing when you're dealing with a narcissist, because, on the one hand, they seem like they're horrible to you and they're doing all these horrible things to you, but then the things that are coming out of their mouth are not matching how they're behaving. But they know what to say. Narcissists are great at manipulating. They've spent thousands and thousands of hours honing their skills of manipulation. And they're especially good at knowing how to manipulate their targets or their victims. They've studied you. They know what your weaknesses are. They know what things they know what you want to hear. So they'll come back and say the things that they need to say in order to get you to come off of what it is that you are, that you're talking about, just to get you to stop. So they'll love bomb you just enough to get you back into that web of control. And a lot of times it's like just to get you off of whatever it is that you're thinking. Maybe you're accusing them of cheating. Maybe you're accusing, and so they'll deflect so that you're not looking at that anymore, and start love bombing you in that way as well. So let's see. So I say, hi, everyone. Hi, Rebecca. All right. So, and remember that on Tuesdays, I do my Ask the Attorney Anything sessions, which I always have tons of great questions on that. So that's Tuesdays at noon. So I've committed to going live twice a week at noon Pacific time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Tuesdays, I do my Ask the Attorney Anything sessions, which I also do, by the way, in my 3 must-have secrets to communicating with a narcissist free webinar that I offer several times a week. And I know lots and lots of you have attended that, and I get to see a lot of you there as well. So there will be a sign up for that free webinar in the comments in this video as well, once we put it up on YouTube. So if you want to participate in that, come on over and join me in that. And that is also free. So, there's somebody saying that he wants to hurt you. Yeah, I mean, so the bottom line is they only use this hoovering technique to try to get you back into their web of control. It's not, they're not actually, it's so confusing because it's not actually to make you feel better, or it's not anything that has anything to do with you, because it never really does when it comes to narcissists. It only has to do with them. And they use it as a tool of manipulation. So, and I often see it with when in the discard phase, as the divorce is starting or something like that. But remember, with the narcissistic relationship, it's love bombing, devaluing, and discarding. But it's not love bomb, then devalue, then discard. It goes. It starts off with love bombing, but they can be love bombing as they're devaluing, love bombing as they're discarding. And that's what hoovering is. So that's the term of the day with hoovering. And, and all forms of narcissists do this, whether it's the covert narcissist or the grandiose narcissist, or the overt as grandiose, or the malignant narcissist. They all use this tool of hoovering in order to get the person that they have targeted to not look at their bad behavior and only be back into being a form of supply for them, because that's what you serve for them, is giving them a source of narcissistic supply. Remember, supply is anything that feeds their ego. It could be normal things that feed people's egos, such as money and compliments and those sorts of things. But what narcissists need is an endless amount of other supply too, which is devaluing people and discarding people, and debasing people, making people feel bad, jerking them around. So remember that when you're going to negotiate with a narcissist, you are not coming from the same place. You, reasonable person, are looking for a reasonable outcome. Narcissist person is looking to feed their ego. So if jerking you around helps to feed their ego, then they will continue to do that for as long as they need to. And that's why it's really, really hard to settle cases with narcissists. And that's why I created my slave program, which I know a lot of you have participated in as well.
Today's topic is ghosting, and I wanted to talk about ghosting and the difference between ghosting and no contact, because I think it's really important that you understand that one is something that the narcissist uses and the other is something that we as the victims and targets of narcissists need to do. So ghosting is something that a narcissist uses in order to manipulate you, in order to control you, in order to hurt you, to abuse you. So they stop talking to you, they stop communicating with you, so that you panic and you start really trying to oh, please take me back. It's all part of the trauma bonding. It's part of that whole cycle of love bombing versus devaluing. So, it's love bombing, devaluing, discard. And I do have videos on each one of the areas, the phases of the relationship. So if you haven't watched those videos, you should go back and check them out. But it starts with love bombing. It always ends with a discard. But in between there, they can actually vacillate between all of the different phases of the relationship. So it could be love bombing, then devaluing, then discard, and then back to love bombing. You're kind of going back and forth all of the time. Whereas no contact is something that we use as the targets, as the victims, to finally protect ourselves from the abuse, to finally put up a barrier against that constant love bombing, devaluing, discard, toxic stew that you're constantly being subjected to, the gaslighting, the intimidation tactics. And when you go into the process of either you trying to discard a narcissist in the relationship or they're discarding you, it doesn't really matter. As long as they see their narcissistic supply walking out the door, and they're afraid that you're going to expose them, then they're going to want to get you first. And that's why in a divorce setting or even a breakup of a business partner or any kind of a setting where you're trying to extricate yourself from that relationship, the first thing they're going to do is try to get you first, try to take you down. Becomes the fight of your life, because with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. It can't be that you just happily shake hands, come to a nice little fair resolution and walk away, because it's not about that for them. It's about winning. It's about taking you down. It's about making you look bad. It's about, they get supply from that. And so normal people go, well, okay, what does the law say about how we end this thing? And let's just come up with a nice resolution that is basically what the law would provide. I've had many narcissistic clients who have said to me, I'd rather pay you than the other person, because they actually prefer to pay the lawyer because of the supply that they get, that what feeds their ego. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply, I do have a video in this Narcissism 101 series on narcissistic supply. So go and check that out. But if you, what most lawyers and judges do not understand, the court system does not understand, is that these people don't want to settle the case. That's why they constantly move the goalpost and constantly, come up with reasons why they can't settle the case at this particular time. And of course, it's always your fault, right? So, but ghosting is a tactic that they use to stop communicating and stop talking with a person, but it's used as a method of manipulation, a method of abuse. It is something that they try to torture their victims or their targets by using. So that's what that is. And I'm just looking to see where all of you guys are from. Let me know. I love seeing where you guys are from. And somebody's saying, I'm the only one who ever apologized. Yeah, I did a whole video on do narcissists apologize? And if so, do they mean it? But, narcissists use what we call faux apologies, which is they really only apologize in order to try to manipulate you. Again, everything is a form of a manipulation, of course.
Now let's talk about narcissistic injury. What is that? So narcissists, if you don't understand their personality type, are actually the most insecure, fragile people on the planet. They do a lot to cover that up. I kind of often think of like the little Wizard of Oz, when by the time they got up this big, huge yellow brick road and they saw Emerald City and it was this massive, huge thing. And they get there and they're talking to this person and this being, and it's super loud. And it's really just this little old man behind a curtain who's like pulling all the strings. That's what a narcissist is. They cover themselves with tons of trappings in order to cover up the fact that they're actually the most scared little people on the planet. So what happens is something happened to them when they were children, maybe when they were 5, 6, or 7 years old, and they started to believe and see the world as a place that's not safe, and as a place that they couldn't trust, and as a place that they had to survive. And so what happens is they have no inner sense of self-esteem. They have to get all of their self-esteem, or they don't even get any self-esteem, but they have to get all of their sense of value from the outside world. And we call that narcissistic supply. And if you haven't watched my video on the Narcissism 101 on narcissistic supply, I suggest that you go and do that. What narcissistic supply is anything that feeds their ego. So it might be money, it might be compliments, it might be a big house, it might be a prestigious job, something like that. But it also comes in the form of a dark underbelly, which is anything that feeds their ego in a bad way. So it could be degrading, devaluing, debasing people, judging people, basically saying, gaslighting people, using word salad. So when you're dealing with narcissistic injury, it's this open scab, basically, almost like an open sore for them, that if you touch on that, you're going to see the narcissistic rage come flying out. Basically, it's this little fragile ego inside of them that if they feel slighted in any way, then they react with this unbelievable rage. So if for some reason, and they can smell being slighted, or any kind of tone, or any kind of, even if it's made up, this slight could be potentially just made up. But if for some reason they sense that you're not for them in any way, then you are against them. And that's when that narcissistic rage will come flying out. So what narcissistic injury actually is like a vulnerability inside of them, a vulnerability in their self-esteem, that if there's any form of criticism or any form of defeat or any form of perceived going against them in some way, even if it's made up, even if it's they suspect that you're cheating when you're not, or they suspect that you talked badly about them, or that you just made an offhanded remark at a dinner party about, I don't know, some ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or something, and now all of a sudden it's just a 3-day huge fight because that injury was triggered. It's almost like hitting a scab that is now open. And so the reaction to any kind of bumping up against that narcissistic injury is going to seem like way out of proportion. You're going to be thinking, what the heck is going on here? I mean, it could be just the slightest little thing and it gets triggered. And in my divorce cases, I see it a lot because somebody will, let's say they offer you some sort of a parenting plan or something like that, and you want to change it a little bit. Well, now the narcissistic rage will come flying out. I mean, I had a situation with a client one time where, and this was actually pretty recently, where we were getting ready to mediate a case with a malignant narcissistic husband. I was representing the wife, and he showed up and he just didn't even like the way the mediator was talking to him. I mean, the mediator was just basically giving his opening statement and saying, I'm the mediator, and this is how long I've been a mediator, and this is your day of opportunity to settle your case, and blah, 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 blah. And, this guy at that point hadn't hired a lawyer. He did end up going to find a lawyer after that. But, so my client and I were on one side of the table and he's on the other side, and the mediator is at the end of the table. And the mediator made the mistake of saying something about, okay, I understand the issues to be a property division and alimony. And when he mentioned the word alimony, this guy stood up and started freaking out and screaming and yelling. And finally, I said to my client, I said, why don't you and I just step out? So we stepped out. We left the mediator in there to try to talk him down and calm him down. And he didn't ever calm down. He just screamed and yelled, and then he just left. And so we didn't even get to mediate the case because that narcissistic injury was somehow touched within him, that, that he, after a 32-year marriage where he was the breadwinner, that he might actually have to pay some support to my client. And then, later on, we even went back and mediated the case again once he had a lawyer, and we mediated it over 2 days. And, he started off by taking these unreasonable positions and all these things. It's all because that injury within him was triggered by the divorce and by the fact that she didn't want to be in the relationship anymore. So that's what you see with narcissistic injury.